Did you know for what purpose samurai riders wore strange inflatable balloons behind their backs? For any enthusiast of military history, the image of cavalry straying into a cohesive formation and galloping to attack the enemy is probably one of the most heroic images imaginable. In any culture, horsemen were valued as the elite of the armed forces, especially when it came to knights or samurai. When we start talking about Japanese military history, it is quite obvious that samurai are almost always associated with horsemen, and for a very good reason. Horses and samurai are extremely related to each other, because the first samurai were nothing more than horse archers. But do you know why in many old paintings, engravings, in many Japanese historical films and various historical encyclopedias, samurai riders are depicted with strange inflatable balloons behind their backs? The connection of the samurai and the horse, owning their own horses, feeding them and riding them, all this was characteristic of well-trained and, above all, rich warriors. That is why the samurai for the most part were small nobles, ranging from large sovereign samurai princes, daimyo, to small nobles. They all belonged to the military feudal estate, excluding ronin, wandering samurai without a master, often becoming mercenaries or bandits. Kanin and G samurai, independently engaged in peasant labor on their small earth. Throughout their history, from Heian, the period from 794 to 1185, to the late Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, samurai had to learn bajutsu, the art of riding, fighting on horseback, jumping horses from a great height and caring for horses. It is believed that the art of bajutsu originated in Mongolia and passed to the Japanese from the Chinese. As elite members of samurai society, samurai were the only soldiers capable of keeping horses. Even these days, these beautiful animals are quite expensive. Samurai and strange inflatable balls. During the Heian period, samurai were mainly mounted archers dressed in classic samurai lamella armor o yoroi, armed with yumi, Japanese long bows, as well as long swords tachi, predecessors of the later expensive and elite katana. In addition to the classic armor, the samurai attached a light fabric cape called holo on a bamboo frame that covered the rider's back. Horo's cape had a length of 1.8 meters, was sewn from several layers of silk fabric and attached to the back of the helmet and the lower part of the cuirass. When a rider started galloping, Holo's cape would inflate like a balloon behind him. The first horo capes began to be worn by equestrian bushi, lower samurai in their status, back in the Kamakura period, 1185 to 1333, and later these capes spread to all classes of samurai, including the most elite. So what's the point of these inflatable fabric balls? Holo's cape was part of a very innovative armor of the time, light enough not to bother the rider and designed to protect its wearer from enemy arrows. The silk bag was strong enough that the arrows bounced off it when hit, protected the samurai from damage from the back, getting stuck inside the bag. Initially, these inflatable balloons were intended for mounted samurai who broke through to the position, fired several volleys at enemies and retreated. And in order not to fall under the enemy's return fire during the retreat, a huge silk ball was opened behind the rider at a gallop, which protected him from enemy arrows. Sometimes samurai grabbed this cloak and covered themselves with it. Thanks to the tight tension of the silk fabric, arrows often got stuck in the holo or bounced off it. Yes, the protection of Horo's cloak from arrows was tested in the Ancient Discoveries TV show, in Episode 6, Season 8, and it turned out that the Horo ball is surprisingly very effective in stopping arrows shot from a Japanese bow of the corresponding period. Not a single arrow reached the samurai armor through this ball and probably would not even be able to pierce the samurai's lacquered cuirass. Gradually, the Japanese had to urgently improve Horo's cape. Since samurai ceased to be horse archers, preferring spears, improved a non-deflating cape holo. From the end of the 14th century, samurai horsemen began to be gradually replaced by a shigaryu peasant infantry as the main backbone of the Japanese army. With the advent of infantry, cavalry began to lose importance, and the samurai abandoned the bow in favor of the spear and sword, becoming an even more narrowly focused and elite military force on the battlefield. Daimyo Takayama Meizanaga, senior advisor to the shogunate, during the Onin War in 1467 to 1477, came up with a special oikago frame made of whalebone, which was used to hold the horo cape in a constantly inflated state. Later horo capes inflated forward and even covered the horse's head. Such improved holos that did not deflate were necessary for samurai armed with spears and melee weapons. It is also assumed that holo was also intended for scouts and messengers, whom the soldiers could identify by a certain color of the cape. The warrior's family crest was embroidered in the center of Holo's ball. In the heat of battle, holo could help distinguish an ally from an enemy and even help identify a fallen warrior. In the diary of Hosokawa Yusai, a Japanese poet, it is noted that when a warrior kills another warrior in battle, His duty is to separate the head from the body of the fallen warrior and wrap it in his horo. Thus, the samurai's remains can be identified later and returned to his family for proper burial. At first, the hollow cloak was also worn because of mysticism, in order to prevent a conspiracy of dark forces against the Bushi mission. With the advent of gunpowder and arquebuses, Horo's cape came out of the use of samurai armor. The silk ball was not able to stop the bullet,